Hi, my name is Robin, and I will lead you through the next presentation. As Thomas said, it's more into details about specific artworks here at the Biennale, and it's, let's say, an approach of best practices and do's and don'ts when we're talking about transportation and installation of artworks. First of all, I want to thank the Diriyah Biennale Foundation for having us here and giving us the possibility to showcase what art logistics is about and what we are doing to make these projects and exhibitions happening. So, the presentation is basically separated into 6 parts, which begins with a small introduction about the project itself and the involved logistics and timelines for setting up a Biennale like this. And then we decided to focus on 3 artworks which are exhibited here to show you what were the challenges and how we solved problems or how we managed to get them here in a proper way. Afterwards, we will focus on transportation and packing of artworks more in general to give you a better understanding what are the different means of transport, for example, like air freight, sea freight, trucking, and several packing examples. And at the very end, we will talk about some other practical examples from, let's say, larger scale projects and installations and how we approach these things. So let's talk about the involved logistics and timelines for the Biennale. So the Biennale consists of 63 artists from 57 lenders from about 18 countries worldwide and a total of 20 tons of air freight. So I think it's a good example whenever you visit an exhibition like the Biennale, you don't have this visualized how much works are here from how many countries in the world and what are all the involvements in these. So when we're talking about our milestones in the fine art logistics, we are talking about how can we customs clear artworks? How can we get export licenses for artworks to be able to export them from their origins to Saudi Arabia? How are we going to pack them? How are we going to truck them? How are we going to send them to Saudi Arabia? Do we do it by air freight? Do we do it by sea freight on a ship? And all these things have been achieved during the installation and setup of the Diriyah Biennale. And talking about all these milestones, we did all this within a global pandemic during COVID and the shortage of supply chain. So these were the challenges we were facing, and as you can see, in the end managed. So let's jump to the timeline of the installation and the setup of the Biennale. And overall, it took us about 3 months just for the logistic part. And the logistics part is including getting the first contact with the artists or the lenders in the countries of origin, to get in touch with them, to check, okay, where are the artworks located? Are they packed? How can we ship them to Saudi Arabia? And this took an overall of, let's say, 12 to 15 weeks. And all started with contacting the lenders. Then we basically packed everything up, collected it, and transported it to whether airports or seaports, and got them to Saudi Arabia, where we then installed for almost 4 weeks with a team of 10 art lenders. So let's jump into more detail then into the single artwork journeys. And from the 63 artists we are having at the Biennale, we choose 3 examples to give you more insights on the best practices on how to transport and install these artworks. So we have selected Shu Bing's Riverside Mountain. It came via sea freight from China. We selected Larry Bell Iceberg from the United States, Los Angeles, which was transported via air freight to Riyadh. And Filwa Nazar, 5 Women, which was locally transported and installed at the Biennale. So jumping to the first example, you might have seen it already during your visit at the Biennale. It's actually one of the biggest pieces at the Biennale. It's a total of 12 meters long, and it's basically consisting of 3 parts. These are the details that in the end sometimes the visitor doesn't know that it's containing of several pieces. And yeah, this installation was actually shipped from China. So what was the challenge here? The challenge was that the crates were quite high. The single highest crate was 297 centimeters, which needs us to use an open top sea freight container because it is not fitting in a normal sea freight container. So this was one of the first challenges. The other challenge was that due to the supply chain problems worldwide, we needed to actually ship it out from Shanghai, even though it was based in Beijing, because all the vessels departing from Beijing were already fully booked. So we basically shipped it, then trucked it within China from Beijing to Shanghai, where it then went on the vessel to Jeddah. And from Jeddah, we transported it to Riyadh Airport, where we cleared the customs, and then we finally delivered it to the Biennale. So on the next chart, you will see some pictures from beginning of the customs clearance and the collection in Beijing, and then afterwards the arrival at the Biennale, the offloading of the open-top container with a 25-ton crane, and the final movements inside the exhibition halls with our crew. On the next chart, you should see a video of the offloading of the sea freight container. So there you can see how it was slinged with a 25-ton auto crane and then offloaded from the container to the entrance. And then you can see basically this is just one of the total of 3 crates needed to put it together afterwards to have the whole installation of 12 meters as you can see it in the exhibition. So then we jump to the next example, which is Larry Bell Iceberg. It is a glass installation, as you can see, and it was located in Los Angeles, and we brought it via air freight to the Biennale. So the challenges here were the fragility of the single glass pieces and the risk that during the transport something could happen to these glass panels. So what was done is it was transported by airplane, and it was transported via Luxembourg Airport because there is basically no direct connection available for this kind of dimensions from Los Angeles to Riyadh. And to ensure the highest and safest transport, we actually supervised the offloading of the airplane in Luxembourg to see on ground that the crates are handled careful because they are so fragile that even the smallest tip could cause big damage. So yeah, once the panels arrived, the next challenge, and then we are coming back to the point Thomas mentioned before, which was a challenge because the glass panels itself are holding the artwork together. So there is no mount. So the artwork itself stands on its own, but it only stands on its own when the glass panels are connected to each other in a certain way. So this was the challenge we faced, and due to the weather conditions here, we needed to manage, or we needed to supervise how the glue and the silicon, which is used to connect the glass panels, will react to the environment. How fast does it dry actually? To ensure, okay, these glass panels are now safe and we can leave them standing alone like they are seen today in the exhibition. Hold on, let me jump back. So yeah, this was one of the challenges, that we didn't know how the silicon will dry and how fast. And because of that, we created these kind of stands, which you can see at the very left, to give an additional support to the glass panels, to have additional security measurements, that the structure itself can take its time to be fixed with the silicon drying. And overall it took us 4 days to install all these single pieces inside the exhibition hall. On the next chart we see some more pictures. You can see the crates, how it was packed. You can see it on the next picture, how it was then strapped down and fixed on the air freight pallet. And then you see some insides of the crate, the foam and the bracing to protect each panel separately, that it's packed safely. And then you see how it was glued together and yeah, how the crew managed to install it. So this was the air freight example. Now we're jumping to the installation of Bilwa Nazar, 5 women. So this is a nice example and a nice lesson learned actually also for our team, because when we did the preparation, I would say we underestimated the efforts which we need to take to install it, because in the end each of the clothing was attached with up to 15 fish wires from the ceiling. So what needed to be done is we first needed to kind of manage the construction under the ceiling at the Jack's building to fix these fish wires, because the roof is obviously not made to fix artworks under it. So first we put up boards under the ceiling where the fish wires could be connected, and then we needed to adjust every single fish wire in the end to make it look like clothing. And it was kind of a long process to find out for us how we, millimeter by millimeter, need to adjust the single fish wires to have it in the shape the artist would like to have the cloth in the end. And this is a typical example. In the preparations, we thought we might manage within 2 or 3 days, but in the end, it took us more than 6 days to adjust all single fish wires and to have it look like it looks today. So you can see a bit of the process here in the next chart. We use a scissor lift to get under the ceiling. You can see how we put the boards under the ceiling and connected all the single fish wires, which then in the end lead to the shape of the clothes hanging down from the ceiling. So these were 3 practical examples which I think you wouldn't have known if we wouldn't have talked about it, that there's so much efforts behind it and challenges, and it takes more efforts than it's visible at the first sight, let's say like this. So now we are going to the next chapter, which is do's and don'ts in finite shipping. And one of the most important factors in finite shipping is time, because it has a huge impact on your budget for artwork shipping and the means of transport you can choose. Because, for example, when we are talking about the fastest possible way of transporting art, of course it's the airplane, because you can get all over the world within one day with an airplane. But when we are talking about a sea ship, it takes several weeks to take some distance via the ocean. So this is one of the most important things to keep in mind, to have enough preparation time for the shipping, because in the end you can save a lot of money, or it just has a huge impact on your budget. And there are other, let's say, challenges considering the timeline for shipping. It's like if there's actually someone accompanying the shipment, like someone is traveling with it, it has an impact on the timeline, of course. And there are other restrictions. For example, if you are willing to take a dedicated place inside an airplane, you can have a guaranteed pickup and flying on a specific date. But obviously the airlines would like to charge for that. So if you want to have a set booking, you need to pay an upcharge for that. While when you are more flexible in shipping and the timeline, you can have a consolidated shipment, which then again takes a bit more time. So talking about air freight and sea freight, let's have a closer look what are exactly the differences. So when we talk about air freight, as I said, it's the fastest way of transport. You can basically reach between the airports within one day easily all over the world. So this is the fastest way of shipping. The costs are of course higher than sea freight because the space is more limited. Actually, 40 to 50% of all cargo shipments are booked on passenger flights. So whenever you are flying, for example, to vacation to Europe, you can be assured that a lot of cargo is going with you on the same flight also to Europe. And this was actually one of the big problems during the COVID pandemic, because a lot of passenger flights were cancelled, and with that, a lot of possibilities to ship cargo was not on the market available anymore. And because of that, the rates were higher, and there was a huge backlog in the air cargo shipments. Another limitation when it comes to air freight is the network of airports, because there is not an airport in every city, but of course this can be covered then with trucking, for example. So when you have like an airport close by, you can just then truck to the airport and fly from there. This is actually an advantage over sea freight, because sea freight, the seaports are even more limited, because obviously they are always on the coast and there are not so many seaports. And the sea freight itself, it takes up to 6 to 10 weeks only on the ship. You need to consider additional, I would say, 1 or 2 weeks for customs clearance, packing and delivery to the port. So a sea freight shipment is 10 times or 15 times longer in the duration compared to an air freight shipment. But on the other side, it's the most economical and ecological mode of transport, because compared to an air freight and an airplane, it doesn't take so many resources. And on one sea freight vessel, you can take up to 24,000 sea freight containers. So that is a huge amount of cargo to be loaded on one sea ship. Yes, and when we're talking about artwork transportation, the sea freight is more harmful compared to an air freight because of all the temperature differences on the sea and the humidity in the end. So this is more harmful, and this always needs to be considered when deciding on how you would like to ship artworks. The last mode of transport is the trucking. This is used for closer relations when you ship within a country or when you ship actually to a sea or an airport. And important there is that you take the right vehicles, because truck is not directly a fine art truck or a truck which can be used for fine art transportation. So the fine art trucks we are operating are all having an air ride system, which means they have a kind of a damping system that will absorb shocks, and they are all climate controlled. So there's a stable climate within the truck itself. They are all tail lift equipped so that you can easily load the truck at the back of it, and they have a lashing system inside so that allows you to easily fix the crates and artworks inside the truck. And yeah, as I said, they're used to deliver the artworks then to sea or airports. So let's jump to the next topic, which are the unique packing solutions we have. And as Thomas said before, basically every artwork is unique. So there is no pattern for packing an artwork, because every artwork itself has its own needs for safe handling and packaging. And we are actually, we can talk about very simple packaging, like bubble wrap or plastic foil. Bubble wrap, you know, maybe from getting an Amazon parcel or like in a carton box. These are the very basic packaging methods, but there are also very, very advanced methodologies. And one you can see on the next chart is the Hasenkamp Q Plus system. It's a crate which can stand inside a fire for nearly 1 hour, and the inside temperature of the crate will not exceed 50 degrees. After 1 hour in open fire, with about 700 degrees outside temperature. I will give you a closer look to that afterwards, but this is just a small video on what the crate can take in the end. And all our, let's say, high-end packing solutions are developed in close collaboration with a German TÜV to have it third-party certified, and because to ensure highest safety standards. So on the next chart, you see the different safety classifications we have. As I said, talking about simple packaging like you receive from Amazon, it's like packed in bubble wrap or cardboard boxes. These have, let's say, simple and basic mechanical protection. Then we are talking about wooden crates. They have, of course, a higher mechanical protection because wood is more solid and can take more and absorb more than a cardboard box. And they have also a better climate protection because the outside climate is not directly affecting the goods inside. And then we're talking about the higher styles, which is Isothermal crate, Vario crate, and what you just have seen in the video, the Q Plus crate, which has obviously the most advanced mechanical and climate protection. So let's jump to the next chart, where you can see samples of soft packing materials we are using. So all our materials are in general chemical inert, so they are non-toxic. that is very important when it comes to about artwork packaging, because we cannot afford that there is any off-gassing happening inside crates or around artworks. So we have different types of foams. The softest foam you can rip apart with just your hands, and the hardest foam we are using, you actually need a saw to cut it, because it's basically like wood. Then we have different type of cardboards, which are, let's say, single-layered cardboard and corrugated cardboards. And it's again the same principle. The single layer is a very basic one, which you can actually rip apart with your hands. And the reinforced ones, you need again a saw, which is more or less like wood. There are other types of packaging, like edge protection corners. You might have seen them before. It's these blue corners and foam, which are mostly used to protect glass corners because they are very fragile. And we have a vacuum cushion system that is actually development also in close relation with the TÜV, and it comes from the medicine. So whenever there are fragile, when you break your bones, these kind of vacuum cushions are used to protect then the broken part, and it allows to stabilize it without putting pressure on it, because there are like hundreds of small styrofoam balls inside, and taking the air out of these kind of cushions allows it to take the shape without putting pressure on the object. And then we have our acid-free papers, Tyvek and bubble wrap, which I will now tell you a bit more about. So, as I said, the most known and simple packaging method is the bubble wrap. You all might know it from receiving an Amazon parcel, and it's made from polyethylene plastic, which is again not harmful plastic. And the one we are operating is a 3-layer bubble foil, because it gives you better protection, and it's rip-proof, so you cannot easily rip it apart. And this is a basic protection against light, water, and dust, and it can be reused, of course. Then we're talking about the next one, which is Tyvek. You might actually all have it with you, because it's a similar material like the masks we are wearing since COVID. And you can also know it from these lovely suits which were used during the pandemic to protect someone from the virus, which are these white suits which are also used in the medicine, and these are all made of a Tyvek fleece. So this is actually one of the most standard materials we are using, because it's protecting the surfaces. And I mean, as you know, you can wear it also in your face all day long without having any side effects. So this can be used the same way for artworks, because it's not off-gassing or having any chemicals inside. And it's again dust-proofed and breathable. And it can be directly attached to artworks, like you can see in the very right picture, to inventory and putting numbers on single artworks within a storage or a collection. So talking about the next one, these are the normal cardboard sheets. You all know them. It's low mechanical protection, but a basic one, and you can highly modify them, because like wrapping up a gift, you can really customize it around the artwork and in the sizes you need them, and you can also reuse them, which is also an advantage. So you can actually pack up your artwork multiple times with the same materials, and they give basic protection against shocks or any mechanical impacts. Talking about a more solid protection is a travel frame. As you can see it on the pictures, it's basically a frame which is open at the back, at the front, so you can easily access the artwork and you can see the artwork anytime. And it's using, let's say, just the frame construction. It's close to a crate, but it's just the frame, so you can spare some weight, but it protects the most important part of the artworks. And this is actually highly recommended for freshly made paintings, because you still always have a gap between the crate itself and the front and the surface of the painting. And this can also be used for very fragile framings, because as you can see, the artwork is hanging completely free inside the crate, and it's not touching the floor or the sides. And this is also used, let's say, or it's often part of box in, or let's say a crate in a crate system, which I can show you in pictures later. So then basically the wooden crate is the next possible packaging method with mechanical protection. It's basically like the travel frame. It's just closed from the front, and of course it gives you a higher protection against any outside harmful influence, or it gives you a higher climate protection as it's closed. So this is the painting crate. Now we're jumping to the 3D sculpture crate. It's basically like a painting crate. You can just open it from the top and the front, which gives you higher accessibility. So for example, when you have 3D sculptures, like you can see the terracotta warrior on the right, you can put him inside the crate, and with a bracing system, you can fix him in a proper way so that he cannot move. And he just touches basically the bottom of the crate, and at a few positions of the sculpture itself, it's protected with the bracing system so that it cannot move. And these kind of 3D sculpture crates, it can be also a carton box, and most of the time the interior can be adjusted as per the artwork's need. Here we see a bracing system. You can have a foam cutout depending on the object. There's a lot of methods you can use them for. Talking about going apart from the mechanical protection, because the highest mechanical protection is a wooden crate, we are talking now a bit more detailed about the climate protection, which is covered by our isothermal climate crates. They are the most reliable product when it comes to stabilizing and adjusting the climate of the artwork. They have a half-life time to adjust the climate of 2.5 hours. What does it mean? The climate inside the crate is just adjusting very, very slowly, in a way that it's not harmful for the painting. And most of the time, these 2.5 hours are more than sufficient to cover all the gaps in the supply chain of transporting an artwork, where the artwork is, let's say, outside when it's getting loaded, so that part is always covered. And in our overall supply chain, we are trying to maintain a climate of 20 to 22 degrees. Our trucks are set to that climate, and also you can book this kind of climate in the airplanes, cargo units. So and here you can see basically an example where we have a crate inside a crate. This is a 3D object crate with a kind of layered bracing system to fix the statue or the man inside the crate, and then it's put inside a climate crate to give even higher climate protection. And again, all these crates are certified by the German TÜV. So the next possible crating solution we have in our portfolio is the Vario Crates. And they are actually the most economical and ecological way of crating, because you can see inside the crate is a damping and aluminium frame system. So whatever artwork you have inside a range of dimensions can fit into this crate. So you don't need to always produce or get a new crate when you have these kind of crate, because it's highly adjustable and it can take certain dimensions of artworks. And beside the climate protection inside this crate, you have also a damping system. So the aluminum frame inside the crate is standing on dampers to all angles, which allows shock absorption, which makes it a bit more effective against mechanical impacts than the climate crate seen before. And then we're talking about the Q Plus crate, which I've shown you at the very beginning, which was standing in the fire. It can absorb up to 700 degrees for more than an hour without adjusting the temperature inside higher than 50 degrees. And it's a crate in a crate with a damping system, and there are special thermal isolation panels inside this crate which allows it to keep the climate stable. So talking about other packing methods or examples, here we see at the very left the bracing system. Then the second picture is actually a foam cutout, so where the foam is adjusted exactly on the dimensions and on the shape of the object, so it cannot move at all. And this way you can also ensure highest protection. We're having also paper core crates. They can be used, for example, for tapestries or for very large canvases, which can be not transported because they are like, let's say, 4 to 5 meters. They won't fit in any kind of truck or airplane in this world. So then these kind of canvases are getting off the frame construction and you can roll them up. Important here is that the diameter of the paper core inside the crate is quite big, because it allows you to have less, let's say, bending on the canvas. So we also have slot crates, which is basically a multi-painting picture crate. You can put several paintings in several sizes next to each other, separated, and then this whole construction is basically put inside a crate, and you can just, like a drawer, move out the artworks. And then we have, again, a simple carton box system, which allows us to stack all the carton boxes we have inside of each other, so that in the end, even though you have like 30 small carton boxes, you only need to handle one large box, because all of the others are fitting inside. So coming to the last point, which is practical examples of artwork logistics. We are talking about an example we just had recently in Germany. It was the Lüpertz pillars, and it shows what kind of extent artwork handling can have, because in the end, these kind of columns were fixed on a 4 by 12 meter foundation, and we needed to find a solution how to get them off that foundation and place them at another building with a smaller foundation. And obviously we could not get the 4 meter by 12 meter foundation out of the ground, which led up to the solution of removing actually the pillars from its foundation. And this was done with heavy and special equipment on site. And then the columns were rigged onto a truck and have been moved then with a trailer to its new location in front of a building where they are now standing on a smaller foundation. And we also needed to find a solution here how to fix them on the new foundation, and this was actually done by putting steel poles inside of each column to have a certain stability and to fix them at the new foundation. Another example, and the last one before I come to an end, is the Geiger Artwork, which is currently located in Munich, Germany. And actually not that much is known about this artwork because all of the documentation is lost. So our job right now is to find out how this massive artwork, which weighs approximately 8 tons, was placed there, how it's fixed, and how we can move it. And this is actually done by getting inside the artwork and finding out how it's fixed back then, and then the next challenge would be what kind of auto crane we need to have in front of the building to get it lifted out of this location. I hope that you got a bit of an insight of what it means of transporting artworks and the involved logistics. And yeah, feel free whenever you need advice or any kind of feedback when it comes to artwork, handling or transportation to get in touch with us. We are more than happy to assist you and to discuss possibilities with us. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
Questions?
No questions? Maybe one question?
Oh, I think we should ask a few.
Yes? Then let's go.
I'm coming over to these gentlemen here. How many people approximately did you have working on the Biennale project from Hasaka?
With office staff or?
I mean, the people who were on the ground to the people all over the world, like, did you do a count?
That's actually
probably a lot.
That's a good question. So when we're talking about the core team, when it comes to art handling, we had between 10 and 15 art handlers here on ground between 1 and 4 weeks in several batches, let's say like this. Whenever artworks arrived, we had the team on ground. The main people working on the logistics in the office here locally have been 3 people dedicated, basically to arrange all these things. But when we're talking about the broader network we needed to use in these 18 countries, I would say in the end, for sure, more than 100 people have been involved. Because when you see the Shubing artwork, I know that for the collection we had 10 Chinese art handlers on site to pack the artworks inside the crates. And this is not counting in the people driving the truck, getting it to the harbor, offloading it at the harbor, clearing the customs. So for sure more than 100 people worked just on the logistics part.
It's really amazing, isn't it? From your perspective, is there one standout thing about this whole project that really you think about when you think about the Diriyah Biennale?
I think the standout point was that within the pandemic and all these supply chain problems, the team, together with the Biennale Foundation, found a way to get everything here on site in a safe way and in time, which I think was overall the biggest achievement. Because in these times, it was not guaranteed, let's say it like this.
Bravo. Thank you to you all. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much, Robin and Thomas, Dr. Thomas. We hope you join us again. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.